Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Shana Southern. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello, beautiful souls. Today's episode is a part 1 of a part 2 series. So I hope you enjoy listening into part 1 and make sure that you do listen into part 2 when it becomes available as well. Now let's dive in. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today I have with me Susan Ross. Susan always wanted to be a nurse, so her dream came true when she completed general nursing at Dubbo Base Hospital. Her hospital-based training was an amazing hands-on experience. She learned about people and she learned about the power of listening, mainly by default as she was very young and didn't have the words. Next came midwifery training in Sydney. She did not enjoy midwifery but knew this qualification was going to help in furthering her career. On completion, Susan moved back to the bush and got a job in a small country hospital. This experience would certainly further her general nursing skills. But to her surprise, it was in this small country hospital that she fell in love with supporting birthing women. Once again, there was a valuable lesson to be learned from the nurses' aides, who had a lot of knowledge and wisdom. There was no access to machines, ultrasounds, epidurals, or even doctors. Women came in and birthed, often with a smile on their face. The nurses' aides showed her how to just be with women. There was no need to do anything but just hold that space. This was not what she had been trained to do. After the small country hospital came London, then back to Dubbo before winning a scholarship to study infant bonding and attachment, community and child family therapy in Sydney. This was life-changing, and these skills were put to good use in a community health setting. Gough Whitlam was a visionary Prime Minister who understood the importance of keeping people in their community through education and preventative health initiatives. It was an exciting time. Since then, Susan has had 2 children and opened the Birthright business. She has worked in many different areas from birth centres, delivery suites, newborn care, early discharge programs, childbirth education, antenatal clinics, and much more in both the public and the private hospitals. Her career was broadened by extensive work in small regional hospitals, interstate and overseas, as well as child and family therapy counselling, philosophy, community health, and family planning. Thank you so much for joining us, Susan.
Hello, thank you for having me. That sounds like a very long career. I must be older than I think.
Well, either that or you started very, very young, which it
that was that one.
Sounded like you did. No, you've had a very valuable career. And, this is why I wanted to bring you on today as well, is because you've got so much knowledge in this space. And essentially what we wanted to talk about was around birth trauma and your perspective on birth trauma and, how to heal for the mum, the baby, and the dad as well.
Yes, I think that, at the Birthright Training Academy, I train birth doulas, postnatal doulas, and childbirth educators in a particular program called Inside Birth, which is, it's quite a unique program, the Inside Birth program. Anyone can train to be a childbirth educator, so you don't have to have a background in midwifery or teaching or anything, because it's all about the mind, and the mind is the most important organ involved in pregnancy. So you can go to active birth classes, all sorts of classes that will teach you different positions, yoga positions, massage techniques. We don't do any of that. We just focus on healing any fears and just clearing that mind of any, all the crap that you develop over a lifetime of what has been said to you and what you've learned from other people, from other sources. So it's also, when you do a prenatal class when you're pregnant, it's usually pop along at sort of 28 or 30 weeks and you do a 4-week program and that's it. So we do a continuous childbirth education program for all of pregnancy, working on some really deep hypnotic relaxation, which is just beautifully healing. And that's all women need to do. When you're in labour and you're birthing, we need to trust women that they will get into whatever position they feel comfortable, and they just do that automatically. You don't need to teach women about that. You just need to be able to heal their mind and just clear out all the stuff that they've learned. And that's quite a skill to be able to do that. So one of the things that I also do in my hypnotherapy practice is run a hypno-pregnancy program as well. And that's for healing very deep fears about birth, deep anxieties. And very often it does relate back to trauma. And, I think many women have miscarriages and just don't relate that to trauma. I was talking to a marketing person recently and we're talking about the language we use around marketing certain issues. And he said, anxiety sells. You're going to get lots of clients with anxiety. And I said, well, I treat and heal birth trauma. He said, the word trauma is never going to sell. From a marketing perspective, trauma doesn't sell. He said, it's not really a thing.
What?
Said this male marketing person. And I said, well, we've just had birth trauma week. And if you talk to many, many women, they will tell you about birth trauma. So, yeah, it's very difficult trying to get that word out. I think that this is very real. It is very legitimate. It doesn't matter for women whether they've had a miscarriage at 6 weeks of pregnancy or a stillbirth or a live baby, but they've had trauma during their pregnancy and their labour and their birth. And so many women just are accepting of that. They just sit with it. And it's often not until they're speaking with another woman who's maybe had a similar experience and they go, oh, yeah, I've had that. Yeah, it's quite extraordinary. I had most women who come and see me in my hypnotherapy practice for healing, it's usually fairly recent. So it's fairly recent, the miscarriage or the traumatic birth. So they've got a young baby or a young child, which is perfectly fine. But a couple of years ago, I had a woman who rang me and she said, I've got a really important birthday coming up for my son. And she said, I can't do the birthday. I can't do it because I am reliving some pretty severe trauma. Can you help me? She thought, I cannot host this birthday. She was so anxious over the phone. So I failed to ask her how old her child was. I just assumed it was a first birthday because that is often a trigger for women, or maybe it was a second or third or whatever. So when she arrived on my doorstep, she was in a terrible mess, and it turns out her son was turning 30. So for 30 years, for 30 birthdays, she had all this trauma, and each birthday it was just this massive trigger for her. And she was in a terrible mess for a very long time surrounding his birthday. And now it was pretty traumatic and pretty severe trauma that she had experienced. But her son had gone on to marry someone and have a baby and almost repeat exactly what his mother had experienced. Only he was the male inflicting the trauma on the woman. and he was in all sorts of trouble as well. So to cut a very long story short, I did several sessions with her, and we talked about her son healing as well. And he came, and I think I did 6 or 7 sessions with him, and he was just, his eyes were opened. He couldn't understand why he behaved the way he did. He couldn't understand why he had these deep wounds, and he couldn't understand where all this anger was coming from. And that's because these patterns are just passed down from mother to child. And it's all registered in the unconscious mind. And once you've had trauma, certainly before you go on to have another pregnancy, you have to heal that. And the only way that can be done is with hypnosis, because that's our way of accessing the unconscious mind and healing that trauma.
Yeah, we've got to bypass the conscious mind, don't we? Because it's all held in, and essentially, like when you said, it's all, when it's passed down, it's the pre-conscious and pre-cognitive trauma that we end up being born with that then become, you know, part of that like subconscious, unconscious, and then you start living from that place and you don't know why. And that's why he probably had never understood why he was acting the way that he did. Because he was essentially born with that trauma. His nervous system was wired for fight or flight, for that anger response right from the start.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's so important, like you said just before, to really understand our mind first and work with that and work on our trauma before we go into, you know, subsequent pregnancies. Because otherwise we're carrying that then. We're carrying that trauma in our body and those fears in our mind that create that sense of unsafety in our body.
And there's so much fear in pregnant women these days. I mean, I think that little pandemic thingy that we all had.
Just that little one, yeah.
Yeah. You know, that wasn't a great time for anyone to have a baby because they had zero support, really. And it was pretty awful for a very long time, really. And it has just increased fear and anxiety. Women have had that for a very long time, but gosh, I'm just seeing much more of it these days. And we should not have the caesarean section rates and the epidural rates and the forceps rates that we have in this country. We just should not have them at all. And I think that's the really important thing during pregnancy, is for women to be very conscious of every thought they think, every word they say, every feeling they have is transferred to that baby. They are laying down the blueprint, if you like, for that baby to be born. So that's also an enormous power to have. You can create this amazing small human who is going to love music or, you know, love gardening. When mum's out gardening and she's talking about, I can't wait to actually show you these beautiful roses, and this is the beautiful deep red rose and you're going to love the perfume of it. I mean, baby loves to hear all of that sort of stuff. The more you talk to your baby, the more you sing to your baby, the more you communicate with your baby as if they are present, physically present, outside. And you say, okay, we're going to get up now and we're going to have breakfast and then I've got to catch the train to work or whatever. That is very powerful to be able to lay down that blueprint for that baby. And when you look, it's not normal for any of us to be happy and healthy and jolly and full of beans for 40 weeks of pregnancy. That's just not normal. And a baby, a child, once they're born, will grow up to realise very quickly that mum's not always happy and got her act together. And that's normal. So during pregnancy, when you have those down moments or you're having a disagreement with your partner, always just put your hands on your belly and say to your baby, you know, your dad and I are having a disagreement about the political situation or the COVID situation or the, you know, whether the lawns need to be mowed or something. But it's not got to do with you. Not got to do with you, because once they're out and when they're sitting in the room and they can see mum and dad having a disagreement, which is perfectly normal, it's teaching your child how to manage that, how to do conflict resolution, how to, interact, and then to come together at the end of it and say, well, yeah, we're probably still going to disagree about the political situation or whatever, but I respect your views and you respect mine. It's just constant teaching.
There's often women will often say, when I have my baby, I'll be happy and I'll have a healthy baby and it'll all be okay. And I always just want to bust that, because it is a myth. For you to be able to have this healthy, thriving baby, it starts with you first. It starts with you acknowledging your trauma, your mindset, your overall holistic health through the pregnancy as well, so that then you can have this well-adjusted, thriving baby on the other side. And it's not just that this well-adjusted, thriving baby is going to appear and then everything's going to be great. It's going to fix everything. It's the flip, you got to flip that around. It starts with you first to create that baby, to create that experience, to create that environment. You have to do you first. And, I loved how you said, even just talking to your baby as if they're here. I did that through my whole rainbow pregnancy. I spoke to her as if she was here. Yeah. Or she was there, but I would talk to her every single day. And, it's still on the outside, I still have a lot of fears in parenting after loss, because there's still a lot of stuff that comes back in just different ways. But just to have, when you're able to work on you first, you can have this beautiful experience in pregnancy. You can have a beautiful bond with your baby in pregnancy. And then when they arrive earthside, you have this incredible bond with them already. And I think if you choose to ignore that trauma, if you choose to ignore those fears, if you choose to ignore all of the stuff that's actually happening inside of you, you don't get the opportunity to have this incredible, beautiful experience through pregnancy.
I think that, parenting begins at conception. It probably begins before then, but that's, a long bow to draw for many. But let's say it begins from conception. And of course, many, many people don't sit down with their partner and talk about, we want to have a pregnancy, we want to have a baby, we want to have a child. What is that going to look like? And what are your views about parenting? None of us do that. We meet someone, we fall in love, it's all wonderful and passionate, and we do it when we're really young probably, and you're caught up in that. But most young people get together because they want to reproduce, they want to have babies and children, without ever discussing it. And I think in this whole thing, especially with trauma, we don't consider men. I always ask couples who are pregnant, and they have a discussion about what role he wants to play, because many, many, many men have a whole lot of fears and anxieties and deep, deep down wish that it might be a really good idea if they didn't have to go. And sometimes it's just this expectation now that men have to be there. And I think we need to acknowledge that, because sometimes a man has his dad or his granddad or an older male person saying, in my day, we didn't go, it's women's business. And it is women's business. It is women's business. So I think we have to show respect to men and have that discussion. And so when there is trauma, it is all about women, and it should be all about women, but you've got to give men space as well to be able to do that, because for them, they feel like they've lost a partner that they used to know, and now she's totally different and caught up in all this drama. And and they've also lost a baby. And for men, I think too, they are protectors. They do want to look after you and nurture you, especially in this. And they feel lost. They feel like they've got no idea and that there's always other women around taking over. And yeah, I spend a lot of time talking to men about that and seeing them on a one-to-one basis. And it's very interesting when I'm in a session with women, I would never see them together. I always see women for healing. And then when their partners come, it's a very different birth story or trauma story or miscarriage story that you get from him. And it's from his perspective. And it's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you bring men into the fold as well, because they experience, if you've gone through this traumatic experience, they're experiencing it as well. But like you said, it's from a completely different space.
It is.
And their story and their feelings and their emotions will be similar but different. Like essentially it's going to, like, obviously they're living the same experience, but it is going to look different because of the way that they were brought up and their beliefs and all of the stuff that they're being conditioned as well. And it's so hard for men because they're often sort of seen by society that they have to be just the strong person and not show emotion and not show that they've been affected by it and hold everything together and
step up.
But they want to fall apart too.
Yeah.
But they're not given the space to fall apart. And I love that you can hold space for them as well so that they can actually start processing what's going on for them. Because more often when they start, like, as you know, if you push all of that trauma back inside and it's got nowhere else to go, it's just going to bottle up like a volcano and it's going to explode. There will be a time when it will just explode and it won't be pretty for anyone involved. So
I think too that when it is very, very difficult for a male to relate because they have no idea and they can't imagine what it's like to have a pregnancy and to feel those feelings. Yes, they can put their hand on their belly, on your belly, and they can talk to baby and they can connect. And they need to do that even more than mum does because mum's with the baby during pregnancy all the time. So they need to put in a huge effort to be able to say, that's your dad here and let me tell you about this car I'm working on or this sporting team I've got. Can't wait to get you a jersey. And I mean, a baby needs to hear that from dad because it's very different talk generally than what a mum does. And that's great. But, if there's trauma, any other sort of trauma in your life, if you've had a loved one die or you've had, a hospitalisation and had surgery or whatever, the things that both men and women can relate to very easily. Yeah, my mum died or, yes, I had a broken leg or whatever, you can relate to that. But with this, it's so new and so foreign to men. Women talk about it all the time, I've got friends who've got children in their 30s and 40s, and we can still sit down and talk about all of that stuff. It never stops. But men are not exposed to that. So they suddenly have got a partner, being pregnant, having a baby, and then there's some trauma, or there's trauma before the baby's born, as in a miscarriage or a stillbirth.
It's so important, like you said, men don't openly start conversations about it because, I interviewed a man on the podcast not that long ago, and he said it was more so because every time he tried, he was met with, people that didn't understand why he was so emotional, and they were pretty much telling him to just, buck up. And he's like, I can't, I can't, but who can I talk to about this? And so he then needed to find these people. So he actively had to seek out certain, safe spaces so that he could then start to open up. And I think it's easier for women because we're more naturally inclined to start talking about what we've been going through and emotions, and it's a bit more acceptable to talk about it. But the men need that space too. And like you said, it's so foreign It's not like a broken leg, or it's not like a lost, when your parent dies and stuff like that. It's where other people can go, oh, I relate to you, I can feel you. It's even though the statistics of loss is so high, there's just not enough people out there talking about it or being okay with someone talking about it with them.
Mm.
And there needs to just be more spaces, more people that can be okay with that.
Mm. And that's why when women have had a traumatic birth, I also teach women how to heal that experience for that baby, because you need to be able to get rid of that for the baby as well, so that they're not going to grow up and repeat the same pattern. Because it's extraordinary when you have a group of pregnant women and they're all fearful and they've all got anxiety, and yet it might be usually their first pregnancy. So where did that come from? So it comes from how they were birthed, how they were grown in utero, and if their mum was experiencing doubt, do I really want this baby? Am I ready for this baby? Any sort of doubt. If she's got anxiety, if what we certainly know for women who drink alcohol, take drugs, or are weaning themselves off all of that, that impacts that baby. And that baby has a much higher incidence of growing up and repeating those patterns. So women don't often realise that, where their fear originates is from how they were grown and birthed. And so that's what the hypnopregnancy program that I do through my practice just heals that. But it's a continuous program all the way through pregnancy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, in terms of how we can avoid, birth trauma. Because like you just mentioned, my daughter has severe anxiety, and I know that that has been a birth trauma, and I can see that in her. I'm aware of that, and I'm trying to support, her through it, myself through it as well. But it can be difficult. But yeah, I'd love to discuss, in terms of how we can then avoid birth trauma moving forward.
I think, first of all, you've got to recognise that you've had birth trauma. And it's extraordinary, when you talk to women, they're very almost accepting of what they've experienced is normal.
Yeah.
But it's actually been huge trauma.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you get an opportunity to talk to their partner separately, they will tell you how much they've changed since that trauma, but she's not recognising it. Because a lot of women go, oh, well, it's okay to have an epidural, and thank heavens for epidurals, but they need to be used medically in very, very, very rare circumstances. Yes, they can save lives, but that's a very, very rare event. It should not be accepted as the norm, because once you have an epidural, there's a whole lot of other interventions that occur for mum and for baby. So having a normal birth, I do have some issues with saying natural birth. It's just having a normal vaginal birth is really, really important and really key to producing a happy, healthy, well-rounded, secure baby who's going to, and we need those new humans to come into the world who are intelligent and free-thinking and, smart and funny and, going to take the world in a more positive direction, because, gosh, there's lots of negativity in the world at the moment. So, it's almost an uphill battle for someone being born today, I think, to come out and go, oh, my goodness, what's happening? So
what am I coming into?
Yeah, so you have the power during pregnancy to create whatever you want. It is such a wonderful, amazing, joyous thing. So many, many women don't realise that they are carrying trauma from how they were grown and birthed, how they've lived their life, let alone a past birth trauma. So the hypnopregnancy program that I do is just healing their mind. And, many other cultures do this, through ceremonies and rituals and stuff. This is beautiful, hypnotic relaxation and clearing any stuff out of their unconscious mind that they're not going to pass on. It's really handing back her innate power because, this is what we are put on this earth to do, women. I'm not barefoot pregnant and in the kitchen. That sounds terrible. But because we all do amazing, wonderful things, but we are designed to be pregnant and give birth. But we need to know and recognise that maybe we've got some past trauma, maybe we've had incidences in the past, and we all do have this, where I had a bit of anxiety about that, or I was upset about that, or I know I'm not good at conflict resolution, or I know I just run away from that issue. We all have little bits of all of that sort of stuff. So which bits do I need to heal and get my act together so that I can create this amazing human being? Because we need more amazing human beings, I reckon.
Yeah.
And it's never too late for any woman to heal from a traumatic experience and then know how to heal their baby or their child as well. As I referenced with this 30-year-old man who then went on, I might say, the relationship that he had and the child he had, that all fell apart, unfortunately. But he did go on to have another relationship and another family and could not believe how different that experience was, simply because he got rid of all this stuff.
Yeah. And it is it's something that is constantly running inside of you until you get that awareness to go, well, hang on a second, I actually don't need this in me anymore. This maybe did serve a purpose at some point or however it was created, but it doesn't need to be running on that constant loop inside of your body anymore and affecting all of the different things on the outside of you.
And sometimes you just don't realise how many things it is affecting. And, with the hypnotherapy that I use, you can never change the event. So whatever trauma you have had in the past, you can't change that event. That's always going to be there. But you can take the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
That is negatively affecting every aspect of your life. It can be for many, many people.
Yeah.
You can be, sometimes you meet people and they're beautiful souls and they're happy on the surface and they're always, positive, but you can get a sense of underneath there is something bubbling away. You get that sense with some people.
Yeah.
Some people can just be way too happy, I reckon.
Yes.
They present like that with everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely encountered those people. And I'm like, that's just too much energy, too much happy for me.
Yes. And then, of course, there's the opposite to that. People who just walk around with this heavy weight of fear and trauma. And it is like this big weight that just weighs them down. You can see it physically in their body and you can certainly hear it in their words.
No more feeling like support isn't available to you. No more feeling alone and suffering in silence. No more years of therapy and walking away feeling like something is missing. You have the safe space to take off your mask, feel seen, validated, understood, and supported. Introducing the self-healing immersion after pregnancy loss, an empowering and transformative 6-week program designed to guide you, the angel mom or dad, on a journey from immense heartache and emotional overwhelm to finding clarity, peace, and calm in your heart, mind, and body. In this program, you'll discover the 6 key elements that unlock healing and help you return to love for yourself and your life. Join us on the self-healing immersion journey and embark on a path of profound healing and self-discovery. Find clarity, peace, and the ability to navigate life's challenges with grace. Don't wait any longer to embrace the life you deserve. Join the self-healing immersion. To enroll into the program, visit our website at www.shanasouthern.com. Follow along on the podcast Instagram page at pregnancyloss_podcast to learn more or find the link in my bio to enroll. And subscribe to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast on your favourite podcast platform. Start your journey towards clarity, peace, and returning to love today. I am ready to guide you. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing_PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.